Stop looking across the room. Your real competition is in the mirror, and he woke up before you did. Let me tell you something that took me a long time to understand. I used to watch other people like it was my full-time job. I'd scroll through LinkedIn at 11 o'clock at night, lying in bed, watching people I went to college with announce promotions, launch companies, ring bells at the New York Stock Exchange, post pictures from conferences I'd never been invited to. And every single time, I'd feel this slow, sick feeling crawl up from my stomach into my chest. That particular brand of American pain that nobody talks about at the dinner table. The pain of comparison. The quiet devastation of looking at someone else's highlight reel and measuring it against your behind-the-scenes footage. I thought I was being competitive. I thought I was being driven. I was actually being destroyed. And the worst part? The people I was watching didn't even know I existed. Here's what they don't teach you in school. Not in the hallways of any high school in Ohio, not in the lecture halls of any university in Texas, not in the break rooms of any startup in San Francisco. They don't teach you that competition, as most of us practice it, is a trap. From the time we are children, we are ranked. Report cards, class standings, SAT scores, sports tryouts, spelling bees. We are handed an invisible measuring stick the moment we walk through the doors of kindergarten, and that measuring stick always points outward, at the kid next to us, at the classmate ahead of us, at the colleague who got the promotion we wanted. We grow up believing that success is a race with other people, that there are limited seats at the table, that for me to win, somebody else has to lose, that life is a zero-sum game being played on a scoreboard only we can see. And so we spend our energy, our precious, irreplaceable energy, watching other people run their race instead of running our own. I did this for years. I watched Marcus from my old job drive a better car and felt like I was falling behind. I watched my college roommate, Derek, buy a house in Austin and felt like I was losing something I had never even been competing for. I watched strangers on Instagram live lives I didn't even want and somehow still felt inadequate that I didn't have them. This is the lie. This is the trap. And it is so beautifully constructed that most people never escape it. Because here's what nobody tells you. You cannot control what Marcus does. You cannot control what Derek builds. You cannot control the stranger on Instagram, the colleague in the cubicle next to you, the friend from college who seems to have figured it all out. The only thing you can control, the only race that actually matters, is the one you are running against the person you were yesterday. I want to tell you about a Tuesday morning in Nashville, Tennessee, about 6 years ago. I was 34 years old. I was working a mid-level marketing job at a healthcare company downtown. Decent salary, decent benefits, the kind of job that looks fine on paper but feels hollow when you sit with it long enough. I had been telling myself for 3 years that I was going to write a book. 3 years. I had a title, I had a rough outline, I had a journal full of ideas that I had been adding to since I was 28. I had everything except the actual pages. That morning, I walked into the kitchen counter to get my coffee and ran into a colleague named Sandra. Sandra was quiet, kept to herself mostly, never talked about big dreams or grand ambitions. She was just steady, consistent, present. That morning, Sandra mentioned, completely casually, the way you'd mention the weather, that she had just finished writing her second book. Her second book! I nearly dropped my coffee. I said, "Sandra, I didn't even know you were writing." She smiled and said something I have never forgotten. She said, "I don't really talk about it. I just try to write 1 page more today than I wrote yesterday." 1 page more today than I wrote yesterday. I drove home that evening and sat at my kitchen table in the quiet. My wife was putting the kids to bed. The house was still. And I opened my journal, the one I had been adding ideas to for 6 years without ever turning them into anything, and I read the first line I had written back when I was 28. And then I looked at what 34-year-old me had actually produced. Nothing. Not a single page. 6 years, and my competitor, the version of me from yesterday and the day before and the year before, had been lapping me every single morning while I was busy watching everyone else run their race. That was the night I stopped competing with the world and started competing with myself. What yesterday's you actually means. I want to be precise about this, because this idea is simple on the surface, but it runs deep. When I say yesterday's you, I don't mean some vague, poetic concept. I mean something very specific and very measurable. Yesterday's you is the version of you that woke up with the same 24 hours you have today and made a specific set of choices. He chose what to eat. He chose how to spend his morning. He chose what to read or not read, who to call or not call, whether to work on that idea or leave it sitting in a journal for another year. Yesterday's you set the bar, and today's job, your only job, is to clear it by an inch, not by a mile, not in some dramatic, life-overhauling leap that requires a perfect Monday morning and a brand new journal and a motivational playlist, just by an inch. Did yesterday's you do 20 push-ups? Do 21 today. Did yesterday's you spend 2 hours scrolling and 30 minutes working? Spend an hour and 50 minutes scrolling and 40 minutes working today. Did yesterday's you have a difficult conversation you've been avoiding? Have it today. This is not about perfection. This is not about transformation overnight. This is about the most powerful force in the universe applied to human potential, the force of compounding. A 1% improvement every single day compounds into being 37 times better over the course of 1 year. Not 1% better, 37 times better. The math doesn't lie. The math never lies. It just requires the patience that social media and comparison culture have slowly stolen from us. The problem with competing against other people is that their timeline is completely irrelevant to yours. Marcus got his promotion at 32. Good for Marcus. Your path is not Marcus's path. Your gifts are not Marcus's gifts. Your assignment on this earth is not Marcus's assignment. But yesterday's you? Yesterday's you is running your exact race with your exact resources, your exact starting point, your exact limitations. Yesterday's you is the only fair, honest, perfectly calibrated competitor you will ever have. And yesterday's you is coming for you every single morning, whether you're ready or not. Here's something I've noticed about the people who achieve truly remarkable things in this country. Not the people who are famous for 15 minutes, not the influencers with the curated feeds. I mean the people who build something real, the teachers who transform schools, the entrepreneurs who build companies that last, the artists who create work that endures, the parents who raise children who change the world. Those people are not obsessed with what anyone else is doing. They are obsessed with their own progress. They keep a scoreboard that nobody else can see, and they check that scoreboard every single day with the ruthless honesty of someone who has decided that self-deception is a luxury they can no longer afford. I started keeping that scoreboard 6 years ago, the night after Sandra told me about her second book. It wasn't complicated. Every night before I went to sleep, I asked myself 3 questions. Was I better today than I was yesterday? Did I move the needle even slightly on the thing that matters most to me? Is the person I am tonight someone tomorrow's me can be proud of? 3 questions, that's it. No app, no elaborate system, just 3 questions and the honest answers I owed myself. Some nights the answer was yes. Some nights the answer was a hard, humbling no. But here's what those questions did. They redirected my gaze. Every single night, they pulled my eyes away from Marcus's scoreboard, away from Derek's scoreboard, away from the stranger on Instagram, and pointed them back at the only scoreboard that was ever mine to own.
I need to say something here that might surprise you.
The biggest obstacle between you and the greatest version of yourself is not failure. Failure is loud. Failure is obvious. Failure has a way of grabbing you by the collar and demanding your attention. Failure, handled right, is one of the most effective teachers you will ever have. The real enemy, the quiet assassin, is good enough. Good enough is seductive in a way that failure never is. Good enough pays the bills. Good enough gets you praise. Good enough keeps the peace. Good enough lets you sleep at night without the discomfort of knowing you left something on the table. But good enough is yesterday's you setting the bar, and today's you deciding not to clear it. Every morning you wake up, in America, in this country built on the radical idea that a person can become more than what they were born into, you are given a choice. The choice to be at least slightly more than you were the day before, or the choice to be exactly the same, dressed up in a new day's clothing. Most people choose the same, not out of laziness, out of fear. Fear that trying and falling short is worse than not trying at all. Fear that clearing the bar by an inch isn't impressive enough to matter. Fear that gradual, quiet, unsexy progress doesn't count because nobody's watching and nobody's clapping. But here is the truth that changed my life. Progress doesn't need an audience to be real. The page you write at midnight when the house is quiet, that's real. The extra rep you push out when nobody's in the gym, that's real. The hard conversation you have with yourself in the car before you walk into the house, that is deeply, permanently, life-alteringly real. And yesterday's you knows it. That's why he keeps showing up. I finished my book 14 months after that night at the kitchen table. Not because I suddenly had more time. I had the same 24 hours I had always had. Not because conditions were perfect. I wrote chapters between soccer practice drop-offs and early morning alarms and a full-time job that didn't slow down because I had a dream to chase. I finished it because every single morning I asked myself one simple question before my feet hit the floor. Can I be one sentence further today than I was yesterday? Not one chapter, not one section, one sentence further. Some days I wrote a sentence. Some days I wrote a paragraph. Some days, the rare electric days, I wrote 3 or 4 pages and couldn't stop. But the minimum was always one sentence more than the day before. And that minimum, held consistently over 14 months, became a book. The morning I typed the last word, I sat back in my chair and cried. Not because I had beaten anyone, not because I could now post something impressive on LinkedIn. I cried because for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally catching up to the version of myself I always knew existed somewhere inside me. I had closed the gap between who I was and who I was capable of becoming. Not all the way, that gap never fully closes, and honestly it shouldn't, but enough. Enough to know that the race was real, enough to know I was running it right. So here is where I leave you. Right now, today, in whatever city you're in, whether you're reading this in a coffee shop in Denver or on a lunch break in Atlanta or lying awake at 1 a.m. in a quiet house in suburban Minnesota, yesterday's you is setting the bar. He woke up this morning and made his choices. He logged his hours and spent his energy and decided what mattered and what didn't. He set the terms, and now he's handing the baton to you. The question is not whether someone else is ahead of you. The question is whether you are ahead of him. Stop watching the person in the lane next to you. Their lane is not your lane. Their pace is not your pace. Their finish line might not even be in the same direction as yours. Look straight ahead. Run your race. And every single morning, ask yourself the only question that has ever truly mattered. Am I better today than I was yesterday? If the answer is yes, even by an inch, then you are winning the only competition that was ever worth entering. And if the answer is no, good, you needed to know that. Now you know what tomorrow is for. The version of you from yesterday is waiting. He's patient, consistent, and he never takes a day off. The only question is, are you going to let him win? Get up, show up, close the gap. That's the whole game.